It's time for another edition of the Daily Racing Form Weekend Preview. And don't adjust your screens. It is us on a Saturday. Yeah, things are a little different this week, Alexa, because of all the basketball that's happening Thursday and Friday, 16 games all throughout the day. Everyone's brackets are busted probably by this time.
My Jayhawks are already out.
I know that was a tough one. My Trojans didn't even make it this year. We did not have a very good year in the Big Ten. So I'm focused on other teams, and I'm kind of curious how my bracket will continue to do. But we kind of have our qualifying time right now in the world of horse racing, Alexa. Over the next month or so, all of these major horses are trying to get themselves qualified for the Kentucky Derby and for the Kentucky Oaks. We can't forget about the ladies, and we're going to focus on them in our final segment this week. But on Saturday, it's going to be the Louisiana Derby from Fairgrounds, and it's also going to be the Jeff Ruby Stakes from Turfway Park. Both of those races have Kentucky Derby points up for grabs. Basically, the winner and the second place finisher of both of them will lock their spots in for the Kentucky Derby. And then we can talk about the Oaks and some of those races in the final segment. We're going to be busy every single week here on out, Alexa.
Yeah, I mean, the Derby is 6 weeks away from today when you're seeing this. So, I mean, this is the moment you want to be refreshed and ready going into the Derby. So you're trying to win in right now.
You know what? It is kind of similar to how March Madness plays out, where you'll have a lot of regional qualifiers. So, for example, we're going to be talking about Fairgrounds, so we can head on out and look at the field for the Louisiana Derby. These are all horses that are based locally in Louisiana. They've been sort of running there. That's where their trainers and their owners have their horses based. And then we'll see the same sort of grouping of horses out in Kentucky for Turfway Park. Next week, we'll see the horses down in Florida for Gulfstream, and we'll also see Oaklawn Park for the Arkansas Derby. So all over, you'll have these groupings of horses, and the top 2 or 3 from each of those groups will go on and all compete in the Kentucky Derby. So you'll get sort of the best of each section across the country, and actually now even more than the country, where we've gotten international and we get horses coming from all over the place. Alexa, let's see who's going to get themselves qualified this week. And we start out going horse by horse in the Louisiana Derby with an undefeated runner, John Hancock. He actually won the Sam F. Davis, which is a pretty big race over at Tampa Bay Downs. And the horse that he beat in that race is named Owen Almighty. Owen Almighty just came back and won the Tampa Bay Derby. So John Hancock beat a nice horse who's actually made his form overall look even better now that Owen Almighty came back and won.
Yeah, I mean, this is the horse to beat in here. I will expect him to be really forwardly placed in the race. The only bummer is drawing the one position, because this horse is going to want to go straight to the lead, and that's not really where you want to be right on the rail. But that being said, I mean, like you said, undefeated, who he's beat is coming back to win, so a serious contender.
When you're talking about the best trainers and the best jockeys, Brad Cox is like top 3 to the top 5 at the most on any list right now. He's one of the absolute best. Flavian Pratt is probably top 2 on most people's lists, right next to Irad Ortiz Jr. So you have one of the best trainers and one of the best jockeys teaming up with John Hancock. Chunk of Gold came on running late in the Risen Star. He did finish second. He was well defeated that day, but he seems like a horse who's at least moving in the right direction, Alexa.
Yeah, I mean, he was 43-1 that day, so definitely outran his odds. Broke slowly, encountered some traffic, but still managed to close strongly. So I do think a cleaner trip could make him a serious contender, and he should have a fast pace to run into.
Number 3, Tiz-tastic, was 5th in the Rebel most recently. He had some trouble a couple starts back in the Southwest. That was the race where I could make an excuse for him. Last time out, I think he was a little bit disappointing. I was expecting more from him. What do you think about Tiz-tastic in here?
Yeah, he's really consistent performer. You know, he's placed in 3 of the 4 Derby preps, including a third in the Risen Star after a wide trip. But his only wins have been on the turf. So, I mean, experience and class are upside, but I think he would definitely need to improve based off what we've seen this weekend.
The number 4, Yinzer, is a horse who's really fast early on. He was able to win his last start because not very many other horses were pushing him on the front end. I'm just worried in this race where he's going to have to deal with other early speed, Alexa.
Yeah, I mean, that's a negative, but also potential positive if John Hancock were to get kind of stuck on the rail. Like, he could be one to set the pace in here. But I think he would need some serious race luck and others' misfortune to win this one.
Caldera goes out for D. Wayne Lucas, the Hall of Famer. We saw him jump into the Kentucky Derby scene last week with a win in the Virginia Derby. He also has a horse running at Turfway Park, so he could have a couple horses that make their way into the starting gate. Caldera was a horse who was impressive, but also disappointing at the same time in the Sunland Derby because he continued to move forward. But gosh, he looked like he was going to win that race pretty easily at the top of the lane. If you bet him, you were probably feeling really confident that he was going to blow right by. And he kind of hung a little bit. And the horse on the inside, Getaway Car, battled back. So I'm not that high on Getaway Car. That's what I'm kind of hemming and hawing on him, right, Alexa?
Right, because Getaway Car came back and disappointed in the Virginia Derby last weekend as the favorite. So you're kind of like, that's not a super good mark for Caldera. But he is versatile. He's versatility in running styles. He's been on the lead. He's been able to close. So from that point, there is upside. The extra furlong, they're adding some distance, I think could suit him well. So interesting play.
Then what makes this particular race really challenging and really fun to look at as a bettor, none of the real top 3 or top 5 horses in this division right now or in this race. So it's more spread out. It's kind of wide open. There's nobody that's going to be an overwhelming short price favorite in here. You don't have one of the Bob Baffert horses who's kind of always going to take a lot of money. Built, though, is one of the more proven horses, Alexa. He ran second in the Lecomte and then third in the Risen Star, which are the prep races before the Louisiana Derby. So he is one of the better of this group. I just worry a little bit with him. How far does he really want to go? Is this distance a little bit farther than his best? But he's certainly capable from a talent standpoint of competing with these.
I agree. I have him underneath in my selections. He didn't get the lead early in that last race, which he wanted. So they are adding blinkers this race, which might help him push through and get the spot he wants, but it is definitely a distance question if he can sustain his run.
Horse that I'm really interested in here is the number 7, Vossimo. He ran such a weird race in the Risen Star last time out because he was sitting third down on the inside. He wasn't too far behind the horses that were on the front end. And then he started to back up. Just looked like he was done. After backing up, he moves to the outside and he re-rallies and he comes on again. So, Alexa, I love when a horse like that gets an equipment change because to me, that shows me this horse has some ability, but maybe mentally he's not quite there yet, right? He's got to figure it all out and put it together. That's what the blinkers could really help with a horse like Vossimo. So he might be interesting as a horse who's still green, still learning, but if he can put it all together, I think there's some talent there.
Yeah, I didn't use him, but I mean, you have a really convincing argument there. Definitely has talent. Like you said, adding blinkers, adding some distance. So is liable to make an improvement for sure.
The one thing I'd be worried about is that when Irad Ortiz Jr. rides a horse, they almost always get bet. So he might get overbet a little bit just off the connections. But if he is 8-10 to 1, it's probably pretty fair in here. Furio feels like one who's going to be forwardly placed, right? If we're going to try to get to the lead. That's where he's been at his best.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this horse is drastically improving every start. It's going to have to do it this weekend without the Lasix, though. Would need another big improvement. So you're going to get long odds on him. And I actually could see using him underneath as a price play since we just definitely, I don't think, have seen his ceiling yet.
The outside, too, I think both kind of interesting. You like the 9 a little bit here, right? Coming off that big win.
Yeah, the 9, he likes to come from off the pace and close, which is how he won his last race at Fairgrounds last month. Beat Furio that day that we just talked about by 5 lengths. There's a stat you can't ignore with trainer Brad Cox. When his horses are running for the second time off of a layoff, like Instant Replay is, wins 30% of the time. And that's with a sample size of 150 horses. So he just really is good at getting his horses in the winner's circle second off the layoff.
He gets them a start, then he knows what they need fitness-wise, and then he gets them ready to rock. Hypness to the outside rounds out the field. He's only going to make his 3rd start. He had some legitimate trouble last time out. So if we move to selections before our first commercial break, Alexa, you have, just verbally mentioned, believe you have the 9 on top, 9-2-1-6. For me, I'm going to go with the 7 on top, offering us a little bit of value. Let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll head on over to Turfway Park.
That magical time of the year when everyone suddenly becomes a basketball expert. Highlight watching, mascot picking, bracket stressing. Sound familiar? Skip the guesswork with Bracket Central. Real expert picks, trusted analysis, and zero stress. Because choosing teams by mascot cuteness isn't exactly a winning strategy. Only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
It's made every match so much more enjoyable to watch because you don't get the stinkers, right?
Right. It goes back to these guys being smart. They figured out that if I've got the hammer in my back pocket and I don't relinquish it, we can just play them straight up and win. They figured that out. So it's like, all right, now credit to the people at TGL. Like, no, we need to fix this because the hammer can change the match. And since we fixed it, you're not out of it.
The Smiley Show. Only on SportsGrid.
Alexa, I'm feeling a little bit hungry right now. I could use some steak as we head on over to Turfway Park. It's the Jeff Ruby Steaks, and it's spelled like S-T-E-A-K. Why is it spelled that way, Alexa?
Yeah, Jeff Ruby is a big player in horse racing, and he's got a steakhouse here in Lexington, which is like the spot to go during the Keeneland meet. So if you're ever here in Lexington, you got to go to Jeff Ruby's.
I think one year it was the Jeff Ruby Steaks. This year, they've just shortened it. It's the Steaks, S-T-E-A-K, and there are Kentucky Derby points up for grabs and probably a couple horses in this field that will make it into the starting gate come that first Saturday in May. So let's head on over to Turfway Park. Let's meet the field for the Jeff Ruby Stakes. It's going to go as race number 12 on Saturday at Turfway Park. So the big races are the 12th race at the Fairgrounds for the Louisiana Derby, and then the 12th race at Turfway Park for the Jeff Ruby Stakes. We meet the one to start things out, Alexa, calling card. He is a deep closer. He's a stone cold closer. So he's going to drop back. He's going to make one late run. I think he's a little bit better than his overall form might suggest if you're just looking at some of his finishes, because once he gets going, if he gets stopped, he has a hard time like starting over again. One of these races, he's going to get a clean trip and he'll come flying late. He needs the setup. And I'm not sure if it's going to be on Saturday, but I do think a little higher of him than I feel like the common perception of this horse is.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, maybe we've lost a little bit of faith in him, but not a bad horse. And this is the first time he's trying synthetic, which might help out with that running style. And his trainer, Mike Maker, has a really strong record in this race. He's won it 5 times in the last 15 years. So he definitely knows what it takes to win in this spot. I'm still not going to play him this week, though.
Charlie's to blame, totally opposite end of the spectrum. That's the number 2. He's fast early. I'm a little concerned about the trip that he gets in this race, Alexa, how it sets up for him, because I think there are a couple other front runners, even like the horse to his outside, I would prefer over him as a front runner, California Burrito.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I actually am using Charlie's to blame underneath, but I like California Burrito better, which we talked about a month ago when he won the John Battaglia Memorial. So that was on the Tapeta as well. But like you said, just like Charlie's to blame, going to be vying for that lead. But we've also seen glimpses of him being able to rate and kind of sit off the pace. So he does have some versatility that I think will lend really helpful in this race.
He's one of the top contenders in this race because he won the local prep race, the race that kind of leads you right into this race, California Burrito. Final Gambit, He broke his maiden, meaning he had his first career victory on February the 15th. He doesn't seem like he's that fast early on, though. That's a worry that I have in a race like this, where is he going to be able to close with the deep closers, and he doesn't really get an advantage with like any type of running style early. What do you think about Final Gambit?
I mean, he's a step up in class here, and Koska's runners often do excel in these spots. So potential contender, but not one that I'm using in my final selections.
Flying Mohawk is very interesting. Shout out to Jason Worth, who I believe is part of the ownership group here, trying to get back to the Kentucky Derby. He had great success last year with Dornick, who was very, very good winning after the Kentucky Derby. So Flying Mohawk, he'll actually make his first start on the synthetic. He's been pretty impressive in his last couple races, and generally, Alexa, it's not always, but a lot of the time, horses that run well on the turf courses, they'll perform pretty well on the synthetic surfaces.
Yeah, it does translate well, that surface change, and he has continued to improve every start. I think he should like the added distance, and could be a surprise in here at 15-1. You do see him on the Timeform US pace projector, not that far off of the, finishing positions.
Baby Max, the number 6, he's going to add the blinkers, maybe hoping they can just get him a little more focus. He ran a really good race last time out. He was just second behind California Burrito. Do you like him at all in here?
I do like him in here. I've used him in my selections. Like you said, adding the blinkers, so I expect him to be kind of prominent early. And I do think the equipment change should sharpen him.
Giacoso, the number 7, he's coming off of a disappointing performance, and he just, based on like the speed figures and the ratings that we're looking at, he hasn't been one of the faster horses in this race. I think he's just going to have to improve a lot to be competitive here.
I wrote the exact same, Gino. I mean, we just need to see so much more from him, and this is a really contentious race, so not a place I'm going to use him in.
Well, the coach, D. Wayne Lucas, one of the all-time great trainers, a Hall of Fame trainer, he won the Virginia Derby last week, so he's going to have a horse in the Kentucky Derby. We just talked about him in the prior segment. He could have one that comes in from the fairgrounds. He could have another one from Turfway Park with Innovator. I think we'll at least get some speed out of this horse, Alexa. I just don't know about the finish from him.
Yeah, Innovator just seems to be in kind of a declining form, which is not something I like to bet on a horse with. Like you said, going to want to be a part of that early pace, but there's going to be a lot of horses who want to be a part of the early pace. So for me, I'm going to pass.
Poster is the number 9. He hasn't done a whole lot wrong in his career. He's run 4 times. He's won 3 of them. And in one of his losses, he finished 3rd in the Sam F. Davis behind John Hancock and Owen Almighty. John Hancock's going to be one of the favorites in the Louisiana Derby. Owen Almighty came back to win the Tampa Bay Derby. So that race, finishing 3rd, was a pretty good effort from Poster.
Yeah, Poster is my top selection. He was undefeated last year in his 3 starts, and then, like you said, came back and ran really well in the Louisiana Derby. Behind John Hancock, who's now favored in the Louisiana Derby. So this will be the first start on the synthetic, but he's also been training here all winter. So I think he's going to be in a comfortable spot and is a valid favorite.
I kind of like the 10 a little bit here, Maximum Promise, because in the John Battaglia Memorial, he was way behind California Burrito and Baby Max early. And when those 2 horses kind of separated, Maximum Promise was one of the only horses, Alexa, that was actually finishing. And if you look at his prior form, I don't think he has to be that far back. He doesn't need to be way, way towards the back. So I'm hoping Dettori can get him more involved early in this race. Maximum Promise was 3rd in that last effort. What do you think about his chances here?
Yeah, I mean, he's coming in for trainer Kenny McPeak, who won the Derby and Oaks last year. I think the late running style could benefit from this fast pace, obviously, and the surface. So I do like Maximum Promise.
Curvino, the number 11, just to me feels like one of the longer shots in here. Can you make a case for him?
No, I feel the same way about both these outside horses, Curvino, and he's not joking. For me, I just don't think they're quite good enough to compete here.
He's not joking. The 12 was good last year on the synthetic surface up at Woodbine, but his races on the dirt this year, I'm just not sure if he's in the same form as he was last year. So as we finish up our second segment here, we're going to hand the baton from the boys to the ladies, because when we return from this quick break, we're going to talk about the Kentucky Oaks points races coming up this weekend, one at Fairgrounds and one at Turfway Park. Don't go anywhere.
which is a great place to be. Are you in the locker room? Like, you giving like the Any Given Sunday inches Al Pacino speech? Are we there yet?
Oh yeah, I think we've been there. We're gonna have a long talk with Rob today about the 99 199 issue from last week. Like I just don't get how he is still employed. We gotta talk to ownership about that one.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
They are a street ball team. They remind me of an N1 team, right?
Yeah.
They are street ball fast, park fast, playing in the hood. They are no joke, McNeese.
Yeah.
They can beat anybody.
Well,
they won 27 games as well.
For our final segment this week, we're going to talk about the ladies. And for both of the tracks that we're going to discuss, it's going to be race number 11. We talked the boys and the Kentucky Derby points, Alexa, but the Kentucky Oaks points are also up for grabs this weekend, both at Fairgrounds and over at Turfway Park. And when we start at the Fairgrounds, we may be looking at the betting favorite for the Kentucky Oaks. She is undefeated right now. She is 5 for 5. She has literally done nothing wrong. I'm talking about Good Cheer for trainer Brad Cox, who most recently won the Grade 2 Rachel Alexandra. What has been so impressive to me, at least about her, not only that she's 5 for 5, she's winning, she really hasn't even been tested. Like she hasn't been challenged. I don't think we've even scratched the surface of what she could do, Alexa.
I know. I totally agree. I don't think there's any doubt that she's the best horse in this field. I'm having flashbacks to Torpedo Anna, who ended up being our horse of the year and also Oaks winner. So you never know what we're looking at here. If there's one horse who could maybe be a big threat, I think the 3 is really interesting. I have it at 8 to 1. Also undefeated, but only out one time. So a lot less stock behind that. But it was at Fairgrounds going short on the dirt. She wired the field that day. This race is much longer, so I think it's definitely a distance test, but she is by City of Light, whose progeny handles distance just fine. And she's also a half-sister to the same dam of Vava, who did contend in the Breeders' Cup last year and has won close to $2 million. So definitely want to keep your eye on. And we're getting 8 to 1 odds. If she turns out to be a superstar, it might be the best odds you ever get on her.
I think that if you're trying to bet against Good Cheer, that's the horse you're looking at, because she is such a wild card in here. She showed so much talent in her debut, did the number 3, Ahava. And in that debut, she was only going 6 furlongs. So she was sprinting. Now she'll have to go a mile and a 16th, much farther, but she's really fast early. You pointed out the pedigree that she has. She has a half-sister who was awesome. She was one of the best, right? Like the best filly mare sprinters.
I realized her name is
right?
Mixed up.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. So she has the bloodlines to be awesome. She has a really good trainer. Cherie DeVoe is like jumping up onto the main scene as one of the best trainers right now out there. So I think Ahava, very interesting. If you're trying to bet against Good Cheer, I think she's the one you're looking at. I'll give one more horse just a little mention. The number 5, Her Laugh. She won her first 2 starts, Alexa, and then she went and ran over at Tampa Bay Downs in the Suncoast, and she had a really bad start, and she just had no chance to win that race after the start, but she did run really well to finish second, and she came from way out of it. So she showed us a new dimension, and she showed us that if things don't go her way, she can still run well and hit the board and pick up pieces. So I do respect Her Laugh, but they're all going to have to step their game up if they want to be anything close to Good Cheer.
Absolutely.
So there's a quick look at race number 11. That's the Fairgrounds Oaks on Saturday at the Fairgrounds. Let's go to the other 11th race, this one at Turfway Park. This one is the Bourbonnette Oaks. So again, when we bounce back over to Turfway, we remind you that they will be running on that synthetic surface. It's not dirt, it's not turf, it's that all-weather synthetic surface. And in this particular race, we have a big field, Alexa. I think towards the outside, one of the major players is White Rocks, who was very fast. she won the Cincinnati Trophy. That's the stepping stone race to this one. So usually the horses who win those local preps, you kind of have to start with them, see if they're good enough, see if the race will shape up for them. I think she's going to be one they probably all have to catch in here.
I agree, but I think this race is a lot more competitive than the Fairground Oaks is, and I'm going to try. I like White Rocks a lot, don't get me wrong, but I'm going to try to beat her. I think there's some value in here. I like the 3 Admit. This is a filly by Blame, who's been over the Tapeta 3 times and won 2 of them, gotten second in the other, and that second place finish was in the Cincinnati Trophy Stakes, where she was 1 1/4 length behind White Rocks, and then a 1 1/4 length in front of Something About Her. So those are both common opponents today. She was closing the gap that day and kind of ran out of time. So I think the extra 16th of a mile could really help this weekend. And then
reading in one of our DRF articles, the connections have said they want to try to be closer in this race early because they just don't want to let the same thing happen if the 11 gets loose out front and kind of slows things down.
Yeah, I mean, I love hearing that they have a plan.
Exactly.
And then the 5 Bless the Broken at 10-1, I think demonstrated her potential with a strong 3rd place effort behind Good Cheer in the Rachel Alexandra Stakes. So I think being a stalker type, the surface switch to Tapeta could be seen as a positive. But she is cross-centered in
and she is going to run in this race in the Bourbonnette Oaks for sure. So she will run here, and I think she's a major player as well. The number 5, Bless the Broken. If you just look at the last 3 races she exits, all of the horses that beat her, they would probably be favored if they were in this same race. She's just faced really tough company. The 1, Resolve, kind of a fun horse from Southern California who's been forwardly placed, who can sit close. And then the 7, As Catch Can, I thought was another interesting horse because the trainer of that one, Jonathan Thomas, entered 2 horses in this race, but he's only going to send the 7. The number 12, Will Then, is actually going to stay and will likely be running in Southern California, was entered in a race on Sunday this weekend. So hopefully we were able to lead you in the right direction a couple times this week. It's a big week, Alexa. And over the next month or so, we are going to have some different shows. Our schedule is going to be a little different. We're going to be popping up on SportsGrid. You might see us on some Wednesdays, some Fridays, some Saturdays here and there. But the key is we're going to get you all ready for these big Kentucky Derby prep races and Kentucky Oaks prep races. Make sure to head to shop.drf.com anytime you're playing the races. And we'll see you again next week on the Weekend Preview.
Is on. The stakes are high, but the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that ring. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
Just a little flyer, couple of
15.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. That's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.